Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. My name is Christian Peverelli, and I am the founder and CEO of We Are No Code. And today I have a very special guest who is with me. His name is Carey Ransom. Now,
Good
to
morning.
introduce Carey, there are so many different ways I could do it. He started as an entrepreneur, saw a lot of success. He's a serial entrepreneur, has started several companies. He became an investor through his success in entrepreneurship. He then also started training startups, has been very involved in the Orange County Associations for Entrepreneurship, also is the CEO of OC4 Venture Studios. Carey Ransom, you are so active in OC. Welcome and thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thanks for having me, Christian. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So let's start off with just you telling us a little bit more about OC4 Venture Studio and what you guys do, like what your work is.
Sure. So I would call, in many respects, I'd call OC4 kind of the culmination for me of, I don't know, 25 years of work and really, trying to amplify in many respects the kinds of skills and capabilities and experiences that I've had to really invest into a next generation of startups and entrepreneurs. And so what we really try to do at OC4 is find really compelling entrepreneurs who are passionate and committed to solve a real problem and want to collaborate and partner with someone to do that. And we look at ourselves as really a co-pilot partner in that we want to help provide all the supplemental things that that particular founding team needs to be amazing and to go realize their dream faster, better, more successfully than they may on their own. And so what that ends up looking like is we have capital to invest, which most founders are either told or believe that they need. And then we have a whole set of capabilities that we also invest. And so we look at it in combination and say, we have a bunch of capability that we think can help make you more awesome. And if you need help in product or design or data or technology or growth or key areas that I would consider the key value driving areas, we can invest from our team to really earn what we would call sweat equity in the business. And then to the extent needed, we'll also invest capital as additional equity into the business. And so we don't really have I wouldn't say we have a formula that it has to look exactly like this. We start with a stream of founders and ideas that are out there that we really try to be in, and we love to meet exciting, compelling entrepreneurs. And then we really, through partnership and discussions with them, determine, is this a good fit where we can be really valuable to you? You have the right temperament to collaborate and grow working alongside of us. Are you in a market space that we feel like we have great excitement about that has the right growth dynamics or change dynamics underway? And then ultimately, we really want to add value. So if we don't feel like we have a great ability to add value to the founder in the personal growth or in the team growth, in the company growth, and we even look for places where I would even say where we feel like we can create unfair advantage because of our experience or our network or capabilities, and those are places where we really look for that partnership. And so we've kind of launched, if you will. We've done 5 so far. We're about to do our 6th company, not quite one a month. So we launched last November. So we've been at it for not quite a year and have a good cadence going. And we are having just an amazing time as a team. And also, I think, having real impact with the companies and the founders that we're working with. And that really, at the end of the day, is how I measure our success and our impact. And we know if we can continue to produce in partnership these amazing companies, that will really start to create that kind of culture in Southern California that we desire, which is a much more connected, collaborative, supportive, kind of abundant culture.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. So two kind of questions come off the top of my mind. The first one is, you're really, what's really important to you is that you really feel like you can add a lot of value. So at what point in general, in terms of the entrepreneurship path, do you think that is maybe your key market? Like, how far do people have to get for you to be like, okay, now is the point at which I can help you?
Sure.
And then also with that question, are there specific industries that you and your collaborators prefer to take on, or is it really just general?
So I'll start first with industry. So I'll answer these in reverse order. So we're really, I would say, industry agnostic. We like scenarios where whatever problem that we're going to go try to attack is going to be best solved through some combination of software and data. And so that's really the intersection where we like to play. And partly I've been in the software world for over 2 decades. And what I've seen is what I would call a lot of missed opportunities to build smarter software. And so what we really like to look for are opportunities where the problems still really exist in the world. And now, because of new ways to think about those problems or solve them with software and really using data in an intelligent way and designing that in from the beginning, you can close the loop. You can create smarter software that gets smarter over time. Things like, people like to use buzzwords like machine learning and artificial intelligence, but really, it is a strategic design of how are we going to do this so that it get better and improve over time.
And you need data to be able to train those models, right? Like a lot of people are just like, I have an AI enabled, and then you ask them, so where's your data set coming from and how large is it? And then people are like blank.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I'm from a small town in the middle of the country. I like plain language. I like to break things down to pretty simple concepts. And, as we both know, most people that are customers in the world that have to get out their wallets and buy something, they typically don't say, I'm buying technology. They are buying a great solution to a problem, which more and more looks like a product. And so we're very product centric, and we look at software as the core underlying really, guts of the product, along with data. And done right, this is going to create better and better solutions that can get smarter, that can be more personalized, that can start to create, I would say, differentiation and defensibility in a business model. And so that's where we like to play. We have, in our first set of companies, we have as many that are consumer as B2B. We probably like B2B better, but it just depends on the opportunities and the things that we feel like we can add value to and get really excited about. And then your first question about at what stage, we have not yet had somebody come in with a blank sheet of paper and really come in as almost like an EIR, entrepreneur in residence, where we start from scratch. But we certainly have had some founders that we've met where we've said, we would have liked to have met you earlier because we could have prevented the last 12 months of you wandering the desert if we had met you earlier. And so
I like that analogy.
So I don't think we really don't necessarily shy away from a really, really early idea. What we really want are people who have identified a clear problem, clear customer need, and have a unique point of view, either really deep domain expertise or kind of a secret that they've uncovered as to why they think there's a real need for this now, and people who are motivated to adopt it, and a commitment to do that, and that they just feel like, this is my thing, I have to go do, and I welcome the help along the way. And so in some cases, that looks like somebody who's been bootstrapping it in a moonlighting project while working a full-time job for the last 12 months. In other cases, they've already been out toiling away on it for 6 to 12 months and maybe have an early version, or even in some cases, they have a little bit of early traction and revenue. And we look at it as we've been building companies for a long time. We look at ourselves as somewhat kind of puzzle masters, where we feel like we understand what key capabilities you need at various stages, because we've been through this from the earliest stages to rapid growth, to really help with, this is the right set of capabilities you need now that will enable you to this next stage. It will enable you to this next stage. And we don't have a prescriptive way that it has to be done, but we feel like we can provide a variety of options and then collaborate to, how do we solve this quickly and effectively to really move the company forward. And so, we typically are super early. I mean, we have been first money into a couple of our companies, and others we're coming in as kind of first, call it professional money, beyond friends and family or something like that, who have helped kind of get it off the ground. So as far as stage, maybe that hopefully gives a little bit of a sense.
Yeah, no, that's very, very clear. So actually, that's an interesting thing. Puzzle master. I love you talking about puzzle masters. I feel exactly the same way when helping startups. It's like, you get first of all, you need to get an understanding of the founder himself and the founding team, and what are their capabilities and where are they lacking. But then I guess my question is, because I'm also a big believer in, there are certain things that you want to learn and have a responsibility to learn. You don't have to become the best at them, but you have to learn them. Or you need to learn enough to be dangerous and to be able to hire someone to do that moving forward. So how much are you, what would you say that balance is? And I don't even know how I would answer this question.
Sure.
But between telling people okay, you should absolutely learn this thing, and this is something that you want to hire someone for right off the bat.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And this is from somebody who I have sort of had every single job in a company. And so in some respects, I have learned a little bit about all of it. And I think, at least for me, what that's taught me is, I understand how important it is that you focus on really learning in I'll call it either the genius zone or the differentiation zone that you are uniquely going to play in.
Yeah.
And that area is typically very thin. And that is the area you need to be world-class, and you need to be, really learning and thinking in at a deep, deep level. And I find that far too many people don't understand or adopt that, and they go super broad, and they end up sort of maybe learning a little bit of everything, but they don't find that expertise and that place where they're going to excel. And as a result, they create mediocrity. Yeah. And so, part of what I talk about a lot, I mean, you heard me rattle off a number of kind of functional areas that we really focus on. We focus on the areas that we think are typically the highest value creating areas. So I think of these spheres of the solution to the problem, that's typically product, and you need really good product engineering and design. And then you have your economic machine of, how do you take that product to the market, to customers, and deliver that. And that's typically kind of marketing and a customer experience, customer life cycle support type of group. And those need to intersect.
Yeah.
That's where your machinery is. And then underlying that, you obviously need a business foundation where you can, count the money and manage that. But in most businesses, that sort of foundational layer does not need to be an A+, right? You don't need, for most businesses, you don't need a CFO day one. Now you need some base infrastructure so you don't totally screw things up, because those can put you out of business. But I call a lot of those things necessary, not strategic.
Yeah.
And if your business is going to be very, very financially driven, you're making money on money, as an example, as a core part of your value creation, that's a different story. But that's not most most of the businesses we're in, it's about software solving a key problem and data intersecting that. And so we know that a lot of these peripheral things are necessary. They're not strategic. And if you as a founder want to go spend a bunch of your time on those things, it's really a distraction. And to your point, you need to understand it at a surface level. But more important is that you have really trusted partners whom do understand it deeply enough that you can sleep well knowing that's okay. I can focus in my genius zone, which is what's going to get this thing going that much faster. And so I definitely, I had a conversation recently with someone where I was saying, sometimes what I've experienced, because I've been doing this for a long time, is a founder who, they're in the ring, they're fighting, they're in, like, their genius zone is almost like being in the ring, and they're out there, like, they're fighting. And sometimes they want to step out of the ring, and they may go look at their insurance or their property that they need to go get an office space, or their accounting or something, just because they feel like, well, I can progress here, because in the ring's really hard. And I look at a part of our job is to say, get back in the ring. Like you that's where you're going to win.
Yeah.
This isn't the actual battle that you should be fighting. That's the battle. Get in the ring. And so I think that's a key part of our job as a partner. And some have the wherewithal to do that. Others maybe not. And that's part of the relationship building process that we go through.
Wow, that's super interesting. I enjoy that perspective, because I think that I always try to push people towards, like, what is going to make or break it, like you said, like those key functions. But then also on the continual learning front, I understand that, like, people who are first-time entrepreneurs, or people who come from the industry itself and kind of have very high-paying jobs in a corporate setting, they're not well adapted for startups. Like, they need to learn startup. Right. And so on the continual learning level, I'm like, invest your time in learning more about the overarching things, because as a leader, as a CEO, as a founder, you're going to have to at least understand what's happening in these different worlds. But then focus on the key thing, like, what is your North Star metric, and what is the thing that right now is stopping people from taking the action you need them to take, and everything beyond that is a luxury to be able to learn for the moment, right? And over time, you build a team, and those gaps sort of fill up, right?
Yeah,
really like that.
Yeah, and it's a really, learning startup for sure. To your point, it's almost the antithesis of a corporation that has already built a lot of machinery and infrastructure, and it's operating from more of a inertia standpoint than anything. And now you're essentially setting things up from scratch. And I was talking to a friend yesterday. They provide outsourced finance and accounting services, and they were talking to a founder recently who said, "I'm just going to build it internally. I don't need you guys." And the last thing they're going to do is try to argue that. If the founder says, "It's my company, I'm going to build it internally myself," you sort of go, "Oh, fine. That's your decision. It's probably a terrible one, because now you're distracting your time and your resources to something that you probably aren't going to get a badge or success for." I say, like, you kind of almost grade your startup from a report card standpoint, and every class is not weighted equally. Every function is not weighted equally, and they change over time. But you don't need an A+ in everything. And if you optimize for that, you're probably going to get, a B in everything, because you really need to excel in the thing that matters most to the success of your business.
That's really interesting, that comparison as well, because, like, I remember being in school, and I was always the guy who was getting B minuses, but I was making sure I was passing everything. Like, I never failed an exam in university. Like, I never failed a year, never an exam. But basically, like, there were these other people who would get A+ on everything, and then they would get an F in something, and they weren't able. They'd have to, like. And I was like, how does that make sense? Why wouldn't you just, and I guess it was like a strategy thing for me, where I was just like, no, you got to be able to level it out. Like, instead of having A pluses, why wouldn't you have all A's and then make that F, invest more time in that and make it a B minus or like a C plus.
And
that's
the
really
key.
interesting.
I mean, to me, that's the key, is like find what is that right combination. And it's not always obvious. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, again, what we really look for is that personality type that we feel like we can collaborate with. And sometimes we'll be provocative in the early discussions to challenge them and see, okay, are they going to fully resist and fight this, or are they going to embrace it because they really want the best set of diverse views and experiences in the room to get to the best answer, not I want to get to my answer.
Yeah.
And, I think founders and founder vision is a very powerful thing. And that's what we want to partner with. But what I've learned, through all my experiences over the years is, having a true north is great, but there are a lot of paths to get to that. And I've yet to meet somebody who has actually made it exactly on the path that they laid out.
Absolutely.
And that there are always going to be, going up the mountain, there always are a lot of meanders, and we just try to somewhat minimize those. But that's, there are a lot of different paths and big decisions along the way.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. So let's take a step back. You have all these different hats, and I didn't even mention that you run your own very successful podcast as well. But basically, like, if you had to break down the advice that you could have on two levels, on one side for, let's call them entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, or maybe people who have just jumped out of their 9-to-5 to start a business, what would be 3 points of advice? And then for people who have just made a bunch of money, and let's say they're very successful lawyers and they want to start getting into the game of investing, small checks, angel investors, maybe $25,000, $50,000. What would be like, you've already experienced both sides of that coin, as well as a lot of other sides as well. So what would be some of the key advice, maybe linked to the things you see are being done, are like recurring mistakes potentially? Like, what would be advice?
So I think on the first time entrepreneur, I feel like, number one is really invest deeply in understanding yourself, right? The better you can understand, who you are, whether it's personality assessments, having a thought partner, coach, I feel like it starts with that, because building a company and being an entrepreneur is really hard. And so the better you understand yourself, like what are the things that are going to stand in your way? What are the things that are going to excite and re-energize you? Because you're going to need to figure out how to do that from time to time. And so that would be number one. Number two would be make sure you are really passionate and committed to what it is that you're going to do. And one of the things that I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about are customers. Are these people that you really can get excited about, that you get to be in business with? And I've been I inherited a business I took over about 10 years ago. And about 6 months in, I go, I don't like these customers. This isn't an industry that I really love. And we made it through. But I just said, okay, I'm going to, as an experience, chalk up that probably don't want to play in that industry anymore. And so I think, having that deep commitment and desire, like these are a group of people I really want to solve a problem for, and I want to be in the business of serving day to day, I think is really important. And so, think about that. And then the third would be really figure out like what are the core key capabilities that you need to get this going.
This specific
this particular thing. And it is an iterative process. And that is, because I see where people, they find early people that join them in their journey because they validate them. They go, that's a good idea. I want to be part of this. And they may not have any of the key abilities or skills that you need. And that may start to become an anchor on you. And so it's, I think getting clear about what do you actually need, and then understanding that there really is this, I've heard Reid Hoffman call it tours of duty, or I often refer to it as seasons, that there are seasons in a company's life, and some people aren't going to make it through more than one season. And I think you have to be okay with that. And it's not always a judgment on you as the founder or on them as being disloyal. But really reevaluating that at each point and having an open dialogue. And in an ideal state, everybody's growing at the same rate or faster than the company's growing, and that's awesome. And you do keep that continuity, but that's just not realistic because of all the twists and turns and challenges and people with their own lives outside of these businesses. And so I think those are the three that I would really.
I love the first one, because I think that, we all understand that we are our worst enemy, right? Like a lot of the fights that we battle with, a lot of the way we present ourselves to people reflect some sort of internal conflict, ways that we think about ourselves, limiting beliefs. And so unlocking that piece is just so huge. And it can sometimes be through things like just understanding yourself better. Like, some people use meditation, other people have a therapist they can talk to, other people go through, read books. Everyone has a different method to get there. Right. But I think that is probably the most key thing, because if you don't understand yourself, it's difficult to understand where you need help and to be able to be very conscient about that. But as soon as you do, you're in a really good place, because suddenly you're like, okay, I need to learn this. I need to find someone who has this. I need to do this. I need to, and I think that's just such an important skill at an early stage when you have few resources and you have to figure out how to use them. So now how about the investor side?
Yeah. So on
angels.
Yes.
First time angel investors.
Yeah. So great. This is a great topic and probably, warrants its own. I think, being an angel, honestly, and I've been an angel investor for almost 20 years now. So I've been, investing a lot in the things that I do, but also, in others. And I think there's sort of two ways to think about it, right? Number one way to think about it is you can say, look, this is just me paying it forward, giving back, and trying to enable a next generation of exciting entrepreneurs and ideas. And I'm going to just sort of, go where my heart goes and just be okay that this is all money that I'm willing to kind of pay it forward to be kind of economic engine capital, and hope that some of it does great. But I walk in knowing that this is a lot of ideas and a lot of industries that I don't know a lot about. And I just want to be part of that conversation and part of that environment. And
so understanding it's a risk, basically.
Yeah. And hey, I may have to do 50 investments to ever see one pay back. And if that one pays back 100 times, that makes up for all the others that maybe didn't at all, right? And I think that's a lot of the data has shown you have to sort of go that far to really see a high production investment return. And so if you just look at it as, this is me, I've done great, I want to still be relevant and part of this, and it is, call it economic philanthropy to some extent, however you want to characterize it, but knowingly walk in that way, and then go with your heart. And I think that is one way to do it, right? And you have a lot of angels that kind of go in really thinking they're going to get great investment return. They don't make enough investments, and they have a terrible experience with it because they're coming at it from more of the pure financial standpoint. They don't really know how to pick, and so it doesn't really work out. But if you go in with that kind of attitude, I think you have a much different opportunity to really learn a lot and enjoy it. So that the other side of it is I really want to see productive investment return. And part of why we're doing what we're doing is we're saying, look, there is a tremendous amount of wealth out there, and it's not getting put into the right places that can be most productive, from creating great companies and creating great investment return. So let's pull the pieces together that enable that to happen more consistently. And so what we've really, part of why we've done what we've done is we've said, look, we have a supply problem in this area where we're not producing enough high growth, early stage innovative companies. We're not producing, as a result of that, we're not producing enough opportunities for people to invest, and we're not producing enough job creating machines. And we need, most of the net new jobs in this country come from companies that are less than 5 years old. And these are the highly innovative, highly disruptive next generation of companies. And so we look at it and say, okay, we need to pull the pieces together, capital being one of those pieces, but capital with capability is a much more consistent predictor of success than just sprinkling capital and hoping people go figure it out. And part of this to me is just about, it's about leverage. How do I get leverage? You get leverage through experience by continuing to leverage that experience. And if every single founder, to what we were talking about earlier, has to go figure it all out for the first time by themselves, that's very low leverage. And your distribution of outcomes is going to be wildly different. And we're trying to just really shrink the variability of outcomes.
Yeah,
and so
and fundamentally, like, it seems like, you're literally competing against people who are starting their second, third, fourth business when it comes to the market, specifically related to fundraising. So it's like, right now you do need to basically up your game and quicker than before. You could afford to not really know what you were doing 20, 30 years ago. But today there's proven methodologies. There are people who've been through it. And so not leveraging that know-how, not leveraging that methodology is setting yourself up for mistakes, basically.
That's right. And I'll go even one step further. I mean, even this idea of, I'm just going to get a group of advisors around me and I'll take their advice, and that will help me. It's better than nothing. But I've seen this firsthand that, some entrepreneurs are really good at synthesizing input from a lot of angles and, understanding where to go, but many aren't. And so all these advisors end up just being a bunch of noise that actually drags them down, or they try to be a pleaser where they're trying to please all these people who maybe have made an angel investment or something. And the quality of the advice could be so variable that they're not able to discern which is good and which isn't. And that causes a huge amount of thrash. And now they're trying to move in 10 different directions at once to just keep people happy. And their job at the end of the day is not about keeping people happy. It's about really building the best solution to a problem that earns them the right to become a business that then ultimately can become a company, right? And so the focus needs to be on that. And, a lot of well-intended advisors and people distract from that. They don't actually contribute to that.
Yeah. I think it's mentor whiplash, where it's like you're just receiving so many conflicting pieces of advice. And so one of the recommendations I give to founders is try to understand where this person is coming from, what his background is, and why he thinks that way. But essentially, you do need to learn as a founder to take in all the input that you receive, maybe qualify it a little bit to understand where it's coming from, because usually it's all good intention, right?
Absolutely.
But some advice is terrible advice. I've had someone who's approached a really good businessman and who advised them to spend basically $15,000 on lawyers before even getting started. And it's so there's really bad advice out there. And I think as a founder, this is a skill that you have to hone in on and develop the ability to kind of to put it through the sieve and then to also look at the results and then to be okay, what do I believe is, and that's a difficult thing, right? Because that's judgment. Judgment is a difficult thing to teach.
That's right.
But I think, you add the kind of value that someone like yourself, in terms of just experience adds to that. It gives a bit of perspective as well on that, on those results. And so that's where it's almost just make sure that people are going down a similar path than, the advice comes from someone who's gone through a similar path. It'll never be the same path.
That's right. Well,
But
and the one thing we should probably add into this is, the vast majority of businesses that get started should never go down this path of taking venture capital and trying to go for, like most of the things I'm trying to find are things that I think have a legitimate potential of returning 100x back to us on what we invest of our time and our dollars. That's a really high bar.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses are perfectly good, if not great businesses that don't need to achieve that. And that's okay. And so I think just even getting clear about that, and it may be, hey, let's get started, and we may have to finance this off of our customers and them paying us. And maybe along the way, we'll find that explosive growth opportunity. But a lot of the walking in ideas or opportunities maybe don't have those characteristics on the surface, and that's fine. Like I look at that,
I think it comes in. It's because of this like fake narrative that everyone's bought into, right? Like you build a company, 3 years later you sell it, you're a billionaire, you buy like a mansion. There's so much that's not being said behind every single one of those success stories that's not being shown, and that's basically oversimplifying the process of building a startup. And I think that for entrepreneurs, it's just super important to understand that this is a game that has different stages, right? And so if you're a student and you basically like imagine if you built a business, and this is so doable, that generates $500,000 a year, and you can take, let's say you have basically a profit margin where you're able to at the end of that make $100,000 a year personally, and you're just coming out of and you can work for yourself, and you don't have like that is a lot of what people are looking for in entrepreneurship. But people have been sold into this story of like, oh yeah, you have this like 10 to $100 million exit minimum. And so I think it's like, well, wait. If you're a student and you've been basically, eating ramen for the past like 6 months, like having your own business that generates $500,000 and where you can pay yourself $100,000 of that and continue growing it into $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million business, that's huge.
That's right.
But same thing with transitioning out of like your day job, right? A lot of people are just sick of the corporate world and want to build their startups. And so it's like, well, you could basically build a company that can fully replace the revenue that you are currently making under salary. That should be your first goal. Sure. After that, you can continue to grow. And of course, your company may be a $10 million company, but let's focus on that first million. Like, how can you get to the first $1 million in revenue for your company? And the growth paths are different, as you mentioned,
but basically back to self-awareness, like what do you really want out of this? Like that's really key, I think, to this whole
absolutely
thing. And because there are a lot of desires. I want glory. I want
totally.
I want to be my own boss. I want to inspire and lead a whole bunch of people in a purposeful way. Getting clear about what your why is for what you really want out of this, and why you're doing this, I think is key.
Yeah, and there's such a huge disconnect there, I think, because like people, and this has been proven time after time with people who have been incredibly successful. Like they reach the place where they're like, if I reach this, I will be there. And they reach that and they're like either totally miserable or like, well, what's next? Like this isn't just it, And I think that's like, so there is this pattern in humans where we fundamentally don't really understand ourselves and believe in these things that we want, which aren't necessarily driving the results that we're seeking.
That's right.
So it's
and that's why the journey. I tell everybody, you have to embrace and enjoy the journey, because the outcome is very unclear.
Yeah, absolutely.
The true north, great. Have that vision, have that orientation. The outcome of that, there's so many. I mean, look at what's happened this year, and think of all those people who said, I'm going to go be my own boss. I'm going to go start a hair salon or some kind of business, dry cleaning business or home services business. I'm going to be my own boss. And all of a sudden, these outside factors have said, you know what? You're not your own boss. You have to close. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to be open. And they're going, what happened? This, I was going to control my own destiny. And so a lot of those things we just can't predict. And so again, starting with understanding ourselves and our motivations is so important to really help orient us to be able to adjust and react to those things.
Yeah. And if people are really serious about wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to run their own business, like it's going to take practice. So it's like, I would say like invest time in sharpening your skills to become a good entrepreneur and learn the things that you need to learn. And then also invest a lot of time in yourself, in the understanding of yourself. And part of that also comes with those experiences, right? You learn so much about yourself when you're experiencing this stuff firsthand. And so that's why I always say that, it's not about failing companies. It's about weeding out bad ideas and over time becoming a better, and increasing your chances to succeed. So if you look at guys like Elon Musk, 3 failed companies, and then you build your first really successful company. That's because, and some people hit it the first time. And, those are the people that we love to mediatize. Elon, had he just, had a mediocre company as his 3rd company, no one would be talking about him. But the bottom line is that this is, this is a career. This is not just a job. Yeah. And so if you want a career in entrepreneurship,
it's a calling. Like I don't know what else to do, right? So it's kind of like, this is what I have to do. This is my
love it.
This is my path. Yeah.
Carey, I also just absolutely love your attitude towards this. I think a lot of people feel disconnected when they see people who are investors in positions of power who speak down to them. I really love that attitude that you have. Please continue to push that forward as you continue the journey. So before we leave, could you tell people where they might be able to find you?
Sure. Well, you certainly can find me on here. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can, feel free to reach out there. Our website is OC4V as in Victor.com. So OC4 Venture for Venture Studio. And you can find us there, and happy to connect, happy to be helpful in any way that we can be. And I have such a heart for entrepreneurs because they're the ones that do drive change and positive improvements to our world forward. And so to me, that's what inspires me and excites me every day to get out and get up and help them. And so I look at it as a very noble thing to really try to go create better solutions to problems in our world. And what better way to do it than to build a more sustainable business around it.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. And thank you so much
for having me.
Absolutely. We will see and talk to each other very soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good.
And in the meantime, you have an awesome end of your week. And I hope everything is going well on the personal side, on the family side. Keep that going well, because none of that works. And none of us work unless everything around us works as well. So
that's right.